I live in Pittsburgh. I have lived in Pittsburgh since 2013. And before that, I went to college here. So I'm actually on round two of being a Pittsburgher. And I've been working with my co-author, Greg Bear, for about a decade. Greg is the head of the Grable Foundation, which is a Pittsburgh-based philanthropy. And for a long time, we've been talking about the science of learning in our work and trying to translate what we're learning about learning itself into ways that are practical and applicable for parents and teachers. And as we started doing that, talking to Pittsburgh scientists at places like Pitt and Carnegie Mellon, we realized that when scientists were talking about learning, they're talking in some very Fred-like ways, right? We expected lots of charts and graphs and things that could be measured. But instead, they're asking questions like, how do we make sure kids feel safe? And how do we make sure kids feel loved and capable of loving, as Fred liked to say? And so we realized we had a Pittsburgh book on our hands. And we've been writing about Fred Rogers and about all the people around this region who are doing some very Fred-like things in classrooms and libraries and museums and beyond. So the festival organizer, Lori Moser, reached out to us. And it turns out that she knows some of the folks who are interviewed in the book quite well. So someone who features prominently in the book is Bill Eisler, who was Fred's sort of manager and also a very good friend. And we also invited a few other people to join us at the book festival. So it won't just be Greg and I talking about the book. We've invited Bill to join us. We've invited Bill Strickland to join us, who's the head of the Manchester Craftsmen's Guild up in the North Side. And we've invited a world-renowned but Pittsburgh-based educator named Melissa Butler to join us as well. And these are folks who knew Fred well, have worked with Fred, and have been inspired by Fred as people and as professionals and as writers themselves. We all have this emotional connection to Fred. And the question that we tried to answer in the book was, how did Fred make so many kids feel so good and so special? Kids from every possible walk of life. And he did this for decades. How is it that Fred accomplished that? What can we learn from that? And how might we sort of follow in Fred's footsteps, each in our own ways? I'm a freelance writer here in Pittsburgh. I write about science and education for all sorts of publications, Next Pittsburgh, Pittsburgh Magazine, and a few others. And I've been working with Greg and the Grable Foundation on different projects for years now. And over time, as we were writing about learning and as we're writing about what we're learning about learning itself, the name Fred Rogers kept coming up again and again. And not only because, Fred really was our neighbor, and of course we all love him here in Pittsburgh, but because he really was a learning scientist. Now, it's not a term that he used himself. It's not a term that was really used until recently, but Fred was sort of a learning engineer. But behind everything he did in the neighborhood, there was some sort of intention that was grounded in scientific principles. So when he put on his sweater, he wasn't doing that just for show. He was doing it to create a feeling of warmth. When you walked into the neighborhood and you had that sort of frantic piano that would then slow down as Fred came in the room, he was getting kids ready to relax and therefore be able to learn. And so as we were talking to learning scientists and as we've gone to visit classrooms and libraries and museums and all sorts of learning spaces around Pittsburgh, we saw people doing very Fred-like things, applying some of those same methods that Fred pioneered in Mr. Rogers' neighborhood. And we realized, we know so much about Fred's life. We know so much about Fred, the man. There's a great biography out there. If you've seen Morgan Neville's amazing documentary, you can know so much about Fred Rogers, our real-life neighbor. But what most people don't know is this scientific aspect of Fred. The fact that before he ever stepped foot in the neighborhood, he worked with some of the best pediatricians and psychologists and psychiatrists in the world, all of whom happened to be working in Pittsburgh at the exact same time. And Fred took what he learned from them and he blended it with stories and songs, and he built what eventually became Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, this program that so many of us in Pittsburgh and of course people all over the world still know and love. It's our first book. I don't know about magnum opus. We're very proud of it. It's been interesting to release a book in a pandemic. So the book came out last April. It just had its first book birthday. And so we've done a lot of Zoom things like this, but over the past few months, we've been able to get out on the road and share not only the lessons of Fred Rogers, but also, to uplift the incredible work that people right here in Pittsburgh are doing. And there are people all over the world who are looking to Pittsburgh, not only as the real life home of Mr. Rogers' neighborhood, but the home of people who are doing, in a sense, what Fred did, which is take what we're learning from learning science and apply it in ways that kids find attractive and fun and good, and making learning more engaging and more relevant and more joyful, like Fred did in the neighborhood. The word, it's been interesting taking it on the road, because the word that we keep hearing from parents and teachers, and this is not a word that we ever expected to hear, but the word that they keep using is healing. And I think that's a testament not to Greg and I, but a testament to Fred. You know, his ultimate message was, I like you just the way you are. And I think people always need to hear that, you know, whether we're preschoolers or we're retired people. But I think people especially need to hear it now. And so it has been healing to share that on the road. It's been healing for Greg and I to be the folks who can, you know, in our own small way, keep that message alive and relevant. Why do we find such comfort in the world of Mr. Rogers? If Mr. Rogers' neighborhood was more than beautiful days and pleasant songs and the sheer niceness for which we revere it, why does it feel like a refuge? Actress Mary Rawson, who played Cousin Mary Owl in The Neighborhood of Make-Believe, offers a theory. In the neighborhood, she writes, violence and war, hatred and intolerance are not painted out of the picture, but neither are they allowed to destroy the canvas. The real gift that Fred Rogers gave us was hope. Hope that with the tools for learning he worked so hard to teach us, we'd find within ourselves the strength to confront hard problems. Hope that we'd each find the courage to love thy neighbor. Hope that caring adults would protect us, and that each of us would, in turn, become caring adults ourselves. Rogers gave us hope that despite everything, the canvas was worth defending. To go from a kid who grew up in the neighborhood and admiring Mr. Rogers to grow up and to be an adult who then gets to write a book about Fred, and then gets to know all the people that helped Fred make the neighborhood, many of whom are still in Pittsburgh, still doing amazing work. It's been the honor of a lifetime, absolutely. I would just say, you know, there are so many amazing authors that are going to be there. If I were not speaking, I would still be at the Pittsburgh Book Festival, because not only do we have some of Pittsburgh's best writers, we have some of the best writers from around the country, people who have written incredible books about the Pittsburgh region and beyond. It's going to be so much fun. I think it's a world-class festival, and the fact that they were able to put something together of this magnitude and this quality in their very first year, I think bodes well for the future of Pittsburgh's literary scene and for the future of the Greater Pittsburgh Festival of Books.